get over into how to make the maps, the Tableau Your Data book does point out that one easy way to check for missing data or poor data is to, after you look at your map, you look for areas that seem to be missing. In this case, you can see that an entire state is just left empty. And then on the right side, in the bottom corner, where we've seen before other notices of missing data, it says 1 unknown. So in this case, in the book, it shows you that the abbreviation for the state was miscoded. This is a case where you can go to the data by clicking that 1 unknown button to edit the error. So you can actually just adjust the coding and it will magically work out again. Other options include filtering the data to exclude bad records. This would be useful if you don't know how to fix it. So this can happen sometimes when the data is not your own and you cannot interpret with certainty what the data is supposed to be. So leaning on the side of being more careful rather than making assumptions and creating bad data. It might be better to filter things out sometimes. You can also, the third option in there had it leaving it to a default basically, which would turn the null into a 0. That can twist your data sometimes. It's better if something's missing, it's better to leave it missing than to put in false data, putting it as 0. Sometimes it's better just to say like, we didn't know the information for this state and that's okay, basically. Okay, so just some side notes on that. All right, so the book Hands-on Data Viz mostly focuses on the symbol point maps and the filled polygon type maps, the chloropleth maps. The Tableau Your Data book also kind of focuses on these, as well as some other options on the data cleaning and so forth, so on. Tableau does have other options, which you can explore on your own. I will only go through these 2 because these are the most common. And so those, yeah, rather than going through every single option possible, there is in the notes, the link to the general website for Tableau that goes through the maps. And so you can click there and explore the other map types if you want. Okay, so chloropleth maps, or the polygon type maps, uses the polygon data. So each of these counties has its own data. This is aggregated data. So you're taking everything from all the individuals in the state, whether the individual level is a person, whether it's a city or whatnot. It's been collapsed together to be county level data. This can be aggregated as states, as countries, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But just keeping in mind that this is aggregated data. So the hands-on data visualization book gives us advice about how to do these well. So colors and intervals, we're back to our color choice discussions. They say to make sure that it can work in grayscale and for colorblind folks. I dropped a link in the notes for the Color Brewer too. If you remember that the Color Brewer, when I first introduced it to you, actually uses maps as the basic, this is how you can tell if the colors are gonna work well or not. It's really designed to work for maps. So that is a useful link for thinking about what color schemes you wanna do. So here again, we're thinking about our palette choices. Do we want to use a sequential that reflects low to high numbers, or do we want to use a diverging, which works with numbers that are lower and higher than some set like average or 0, and then you have negative and positive, whatever that center point is? Or do you have qualitative data that's non-ordered, such as political parties? remembering with the sequential that if you use a dual palette, it can be very confusing telling the difference between that and a diverging palette. They're very, very similar. Keys, your legends that tell you what the color meaning is super important to make sure that you have well done for these. So make sure that you double check your keys, that they are labeled appropriately. The color interval choices here. So here, especially if you have very, very detailed data that is like this type of data where you have very, very small chunks here instead of just by state with counties, whatever this is. The number of steps that you have between these darker colors and these lighter colors can be very important in helping users read your map. So these examples here where it's just the state level, they only have 5 levels. They don't want to have a whole lot of levels on here. A diverging palette, again, you want to have the neutral color right in the middle, so an odd number of colors. If there's an actual, like this is the average, this is 0, and whatnot. For the sequential palettes, it doesn't matter if it's an odd or an even number per se. Really, you want to follow a couple of things, and the book talks about actually using a histogram to check the number of steps to see what will look good. Also, just playing around with the palettes, just see, like, does 5 look good? Does 7 look good? Should I consider using, instead of even doing stepped ones like this, of just having it purely a continuous one? A continuous one, again, might work for something like this that has a lot of detail and a lot of variation, but would not work as well for the state level data like this. If you do have something that has very specific brackets, like say, for example, this was like tax brackets or something like that, you need to follow the brackets. But really the main key is what is going to help you tell the story, what is going to help the viewer make sense of it very, very quickly. Okay, so that's the goal. Hopefully, with experience, it will be easy to just look at a map and go, oh, like, oh, that doesn't look good, or like, oh yeah, that looks okay. And so in getting that sort of experience, I would just recommend looking at other people's data visualizations, whether it's the class tearing them apart or on your own, and just see, develop that instinct for yourself of what is going to look good, what helps you understand a story, and what seems like too much or not enough. Again, this is where that artistic sense is going to come into play, because there's no set formula for you to follow with this. The book also points out that normalizing the data is really, 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 really important for this type of thing. So if we're going back to something like this, California has a lot of people in it. So if you don't normalize your data, California is just going to naturally be more whatever it is than something that's in the middle of the country. Like, it just, that is what it is, right? You have very high density states on the outside, and you've got low density states on the inside. So you always need to make sure that you are normalizing your data for the population. So usually how this is done is dividing the data values by the population. So if we're going back to the COVID shot type thing, if you have, if what you want to know is how many states or how many shots a state has given out, regardless of the number of people in it, you wouldn't need to do this. But how useful is that when you're comparing California to, like, Maine, right? Like, but if you want to see what is the rate at which they're delivering the vaccines to the population, just divide it by a number of adults. because children aren't eligible right now. So you might need to find additional data sources to tell you what the current population is, because your data probably does not have that information. And again, Tableau is kind of cool in that you can pull data from different sources and merge them together, and that will help you do these kind of activities. That's exactly the kind of thing I had to do for my data project, not by people, but I used like I used stock prices for the companies and pulled that in. And so pulling in multiple data sources is going to make you that much more powerful in your data viz, like how impressive you are with your data viz and data skills for companies. Okay, so we're going to pause here and then roll into a quick demo of how to do the chloropleth maps in Tableau.